All right, we back with Chuck, and we were just discussing this halftime show and all the propaganda involved in the programming, and it was a good discussion. So I just want to just start the live. But today's title is the Great Replacement Theory, and we have Teach 'em Chuck back for a second time. What's up, Chuck?
What's happening, bro? What's happening, man? Yeah, I've been watching you covering the halftime show. Your post on Instagram and the live you did yesterday. I haven't gotten all the way through it. I got like halfway through it to the point where you started to talk about the View and the comments I guess Sonny Hostin made about the halftime show, and I'm just like, dude. People crazy, man. People crazy.
No, not Sunny. What's her name? She the Republican now. She
Oh,
the
Anna Navarro.
yeah,
No,
that's yeah,
that's who it was. I don't know why I
yeah.
thought it was Sonny Austin. Yeah, it was Anna. My fault. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. That's right. That's
She was
right.
like, it was blackity black. That was a black. I'm like, what the heck? Hey, y'all, could you think about this, Chuck? Think about a white person saying the Super Bowl was blackity black, but they were excited about it. They would still say it was racist. Like it'd still be racist though.
Exactly. I don't know, man. I don't know if I just hip hop is not one of those genres. I think yeah, it's just not. I mean, people want a performance. They want to see it live. They want to see the last halftime show I remember watching where I was thoroughly entertained. Where I say, yeah, this dude tore it up. Is when Prince performed back in like 2006.
Okay.
He was doing Purple Rain. He was down in Miami, and it was actually raining.
I remember
Uh,
that. Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
that was dope. That was dope. And I know you had said something online about the Bruno Mars performance. I didn't catch that one,
Yeah.
but yeah, there are a few performances where I'm like, okay, but you need somebody who can actually put on the show, like put on a performance. I think for me, rap music is one of those things where if you don't know the songs, you don't know the lyrics, it's hard for people to follow along. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But that's just the nature of the genre. I can't really make out what you're saying. I don't really know what's going on. I mean, you can have nice choreography and not nice stage presentation and all that stuff going on around you, but you're just a guy on a mic kind of reciting this spoken word type musical genre that we call rap. I don't know, man. I just don't think it plays well to mainstream America. But that was the whole point, right? And they and they made it a point to say that, right? They threw it in our face
Yeah.
that I guess this is a new day. This is a new
Yeah.
day. White America is not like us. Like, it is weird too. Like, Blanche, why would you? I don't know. To me, I mean, I get it because it took on like a dual meaning because it's Kendrick Lamar, so of course he gonna make it political because he's like the modern day sage of of the hip hop community, right? And
I
so
don't know how. I don't know how he got this. Listen, how did he get this title? I don't know how he got thrust into the position. I don't know when he became conscious. Like I'm like, it's just
Yeah, yeah. But it's just weird. I'm like, why would you perform? I don't know, bro. Like a diss record, and I get it. That's probably his most popular record that he has out now, popular track. But I
most
don't know.
yeah,
Why,
yeah.
yeah, but why would you? I don't know. That's just weird. Why would you? Because it's so specific. I mean, you're talking about it's a diss track, so you're talking about this one guy. It's just weird to me that
But
that,
but,
that
but
you would
Chuck,
perform a diss record during a halftime show.
I'm gonna tell you, Kendrick Lamar cheated because he was dissing Drake, but in order to beat Drake, I don't know if he even beat Drake. I'm just talking, but
Yeah.
he made it about race. So in other words,
Yeah.
Drake.
Yes. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is like the song is about Drake, but it's really about mainstream white America
Yeah.
versus us. They not like us. The
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
just the
That's
bliggities.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. That's what I said. Because I said everybody knows Drake. His background. He came as a thespian. He was already in the entertainment world, and then he transitioned over into rap. And he quickly earned everybody's respect because people recognized that Drake actually had talent. It wasn't about whether he was really hood or People say, well, what streets in Canada? I'm sure there are some hoods and some ghettos up there in Canada. I'm sure there are. I don't even know where Drake is from, but yeah, this whole
He's
not
from
like
Toronto.
us. Toronto, okay, yeah. So I'm sure Toronto's a major city, so I'm sure there's some seedy elements, some seedy parts of Toronto. I don't know where Drake comes from, but it's just I don't know. Like you said, bro, it's about challenging right who he is as a man. Like you say, it's playing on a lot of social, political, social, economic tropes about cultural divides and all of that stuff. Like I said, when we were off camera, that's the angle Pusha T tried to go with when he was beefing with Drake. But I just don't think Pusha T had the rap chops to really make a huge dent in Drake's whole
Yeah.
altar, his whole facade. And I sort of like something. I like Pusha T. Some of his music. Yeah, I know more of Pusha T's music than I actually know of Drake's and Kendrick Lamar's because Pusha T been out when he came out with the Clips back in the early 2000s. I was kind of rocking with the Clips a little bit back then, but that's the game that Pusha T tried to play. But when Kendrick came along, it was a wrap because Kendrick had the cachet and the mainstream appeal and everything else that Pusha T didn't have, and probably even more skill, I guess, to
Yeah.
really drive the point home with respect to Drake, right? And he really made people listen, I guess. But at the end of the day, Blanche, like I really don't care because I don't listen to rap music anyway. And this is just me giving my 2 cents from a distance because I can't name you one Kendrick Lamar song, rap. I can't quote no lines, no songs, like no nothing. By the
Nobody,
time
Chuck, no, listen, people that are in this culture today and younger people, again, Kendrick Lamar is more of a cultural icon than he is a music. All these Grammys, but I'm like, you've never heard somebody say, "Hey man, put on that new Kendrick." You
yeah,
like you've never seen anybody like it's just because his music is such a niche based. It's not really commercial. It's not really it's West Coast kind of. I don't know. It's such a niche music base to where he
like
you can't really name no what kind of think about it. A minor is the verse that everybody knows from his whole career. That's his most popular verse is A minor.
yeah. Like I'll just say, and I'm to that point where, and I'll be honest, like I tell people all the time, there will always be people with talent in every era and in every generation. I think the wider culture sort of contextualizes how that art is expressed in a how can I say during its time, right? I mean, you look at someone, say for example, I use painting as an example. If you take someone like Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo, right? Those were the talented people of their time, and then you fast forward to I don't know, the expressionist era, and you look at someone say like a Jackson Pollock, right? And you look at Jackson Pollock. To me, Jackson Pollock makes trash, right? Now, is Jackson Pollock is he talented or is he not talented? I think that Jackson Pollock, perhaps had he been in another time, right, he would have been a different type of artist, right? Because I think art overall is sometimes a good reflection of the current zeitgeist. And I say all that to say that I used to for a while go on and on talking about how rap it ain't like it used to be, and the rap back when I was growing up, when I was coming up, it was better and blah blah blah. But I mean, hey, it is what it is. I've outgrown it.
Yeah.
I'm past that. You know what I'm saying? When Kendrick Lamar and Dre, this is why I try to be as I don't know, bro, as fair as I can about my criticisms when it comes to a lot of these current rappers, because I just don't know anything about them
Yeah.
because I'm just not interested. You know what I mean? It's like when Kendrick and J. Cole and Drake and all them came out. I was in my 20s, 30s. I was a grown man. You know what I'm saying? And now that they're the artist that's popping, man, once you become a middle-aged man, you settle down, you get married, start having some kids, turn your life over to God, get baptized, you know what I'm saying? You move out of the hood and You start living in a nice, relatively safe, gated community, right? With your 2-car garage and your family dog and all that good stuff, and working your nice little 9 to 5. I just can't resonate with that kind of music anymore, bro. I'm too old for that. I'm
Yeah.
too old to be running around listening to Kendrick Lamar. I'm in my 40s, bro. I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear. What did Steve Harvey say during the Kings of Comedy? I don't want to hear nothing about me getting shut up, my t-shirt wet. I want to hear some life affirming, bro.
I don't want a wet t-shirt. You know what
I
I'm
don't
saying?
want a wet t-shirt, man. I want to hear some life affirming, man. I want to hear you talk about. I just, because I'm not some young, angry, lost, angsty teenage kid, raging against the machine because the world just doesn't understand me, and that the world
Right.
doesn't understand what it means to be black, and we this and we that. It's like, I know that all of that is trash. I know all of that stuff is not true. And so I can't look at rap music the same. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's just where I am with it right now. Kendrick Lamar, I don't want to hear that garbage. I don't want to hear that mess you talking, man. I'm just not in. I'm just not into it.
Right.
It's the genre. I'm not saying Kendrick Lamar is not a good rapper. He may very well be. He doesn't do anything for me. You know what I mean? But hey, to each his own. It's just not. It's not my time. My time is gone. It's just not my time.
And again, Kendrick Lamar is a very, talented rapper. And I was telling somebody in the chat that I was following him years ago, like when he was just rapping. But
Mhm.
now, what Kendrick is on is something different. Now he's being used
Right.
as a tool, to spread this propaganda, and that's the issue. And like Chuck said, the appeal of rap is the authenticity of it. You gravitate to that genre. It's not like jazz, it's not like classical, not like rock, it's not like any other genre. Rap is synonymous with being quote unquote real. If you
Yeah.
know it's fake, it's
Yeah.
hard to get into the music because you're like, I know it's not real. Like it's just I'm
Yeah.
not. And so in Kendrick's, I guess in his defense, this is the era that we're in, where he can come out in bell bottoms and tights and
Right. Right.
I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Right.
But
Because you think about it, Blanche, like, bro, I'm not in the clubs anymore. Most of the time, if I'm in the car, I'm in the car with my children. I don't want them to hear all that cursing and all the sexual references and things of this
yeah,
nature. I'm riding by myself. I may listen to some stuff every now and again, especially like some old school stuff. Broski Bear in the comment section say no more Wu-Tang, no more Metallica. I will say that I still bump the Wu. Only Built for Cuban Links is one of my all-time favorite hip
classic
hop
album,
albums. I
classic
still
album.
listen to it. I still listen to some of the old stuff from the 80s and 90s every now and again. You know what I'm saying? Depending on if I'm in the mood for it. But yeah, like I said, I'm not in the club. I'm not riding through the streets, you know what I'm saying, with my subs and
The
I
two
got my
twelves
amp
and the two
with my
twelves
two
in the back.
with my 212s in the back, and I used to drive a Monte Carlo. Then I had I had a Monte Carlo and some Chrome 22. What kind of rent? Did I have some Giovanni's? Yeah, I was 22-inch Giovanni's, just being a hood rat back in the day, bumping, you know, shaking up the neighborhood. Now that I'm at the age that I am now, I'm concerned with my neighbors. I'm worried about people's property value. I'm embarrassed. Like, I pull up to
Right,
the light and my car vibrating, I'm bumping, and I'm embarrassed. Like, I pull up to the light, I turn my music down. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want to be that way. You just change, bro. You just change, man. So God bless y'all. If y'all still in the rap, I'm not gonna judge, because I came up a certain way too, and I made it out. I'm here today to tell y'all what I'm telling y'all now. But at the end of the day, I'm not the same anymore, and rap has remained the same dumb, immature. It's just the same stupid crap it's always been, man.
yeah, and yeah, and Chuck, that's basically where we are. And then I think this halftime show is kind of indicative of this great replacement theory. If you think about it, where you have somebody in the comments said that the audience was filled with not just comments, but audience was filled with a bunch of white conservatives, as if liberals don't go to football games. I'm just like, and it's crazy because it's almost like he performed knowing most of the crowd was going to be like, who is this? And what the heck? Like, what the heck is just to get that reaction of they don't like Black America, and it's just all this,
And
nuance.
and it's funny. That's what they wanted, right? Because they'll insult Middle America, mainstream America, flyover country, whatever you want to call it. They'll insult everyone to their faces, right? But if you react to it, then of course the onus is on you. They project it on you, right? The whole stop in putting in racism in the end zone and doing all this stuff. I would tell people all the time. This is when I really stopped watching the NFL, when Colin Kaepernick started doing all the kneeling, and then when Donald Trump remarked on it, when he said that, these players taking a knee or whatever he said, he would tell them that they're all fired or something like that. He said his little catchphrase from his famous reality show, The Apprentice. And I remember I knew I did a face palm. I slapped my head. I'm not mad at Trump for saying what he said, but I said, oh man, this is about this. Because it was just Colin Kaepernick at first and a few other San Francisco 49er team members that he had, Eric Reed, starting safety, a couple other players that were kneeling with him in solidarity. But it was only like 3 or 4 guys on the team. And I knew once Trump said that it was going to just give me, and I don't know if you remember, back in like 2017, the following Sunday, and I don't know, Blanche, you was probably still a bliggity back then, but in 2017, the whole league, everybody just went crazy. Everybody kneeling and taking a knee, and it just became this huge thing. And I just said to myself, you know what? The average white guy who, as the saying goes, gets it out the mud every day, gets up, goes to work, living paycheck to paycheck, struggling just to get by. He comes home and wants to kick up his feet and watch a football game, and he has to sit there and watch these young, rich, famous Black athletes tell him that he is the beneficiary of some kind of privilege while they make millions of dollars playing a game for a living. I just thought that was the most incendiary, most insulting thing I could ever imagine. You know what I mean? In racism, because that's who you're talking to, right? You're talking to the average white adult male who is in fact the market. They're the ones who, for all of these years, have kept this game afloat and have made the game what it is. And you insult them. You just insult them. It's just it made me angry.
You may be shocked, Chuck, but ironically, I did not agree with him kneeling back then. And I called Heath, and my reasoning was, I said that most of you all's grandfathers, at least, were in the service. And I said, to do that disrespectful to them, because your grandfather would stand up for the, your grandfather wouldn't do it. And I said, he could have picked any arena to protest that. He could have did it in front of the stadium. He could have did it anywhere. But I said, but to do it then, to me, was disrespectful because of most of our grandfathers and uncles or whatever were in the service, got certain GI bills to get there. I mean, it was benefits for a lot of Black folks to go to the Army, and now y'all trying to make it. I just didn't like it. So I actually didn't agree with Kaepernick on that.
Right.
I did.
But it's just crazy though, man. But it's just proof that conservatives are. Because I saw some people posting it talking about, well, it's conservatives, white conservatives, or the political right. They're the ones who are upset and blah blah blah. And it's just like, dude, how many times am I supposed to sit up here and let you tell me how much you hate me and how much you hate my values and hate my beliefs before I say something about it? It's a cold game, man. These people are the most hypocritical, throwing of stones and hiding of hands type folks I've ever seen in my life.
And what's dangerous is, I watched a few of these breakdowns. I brought some videos, but the dangerous thing is just the assumption that Kendrick is telling the truth. Even if he has this subliminal message about Black folks being trapped in the game in America, but my thing is, who said it's true though? Like everybody's assuming because he's rapping about it and doing a display that is true. And I'm like, it's not true. He doesn't even believe it.
Right.
Like, he don't even believe what he's saying. He don't. And black folks just hated Kendrick a couple of years ago because his wife was light skinned. I'm just like, they wanted to cancel him because he had a light skinned wife. I'm saying now he leading the culture. I said no.
And I don't know what he was wearing, bro. You called it some hip hugger bell bottoms. I don't know what he was wearing. Yeah, I don't know. I just rap music, man. I'm straight, man. I don't like it. I don't like the sound of Kendrick Lamar's voice. He sounds kind of nasally. He almost sound like it's just. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like him. I don't like his delivery. I don't like nothing about him. I don't like nothing about him. You know, I'm from a different time. I'm from a different era, man. I grew up on Big Daddy Kane and Rakim and Wu-Tang Clan, Nas, A Tribe Called Quest, Mobb Deep. You know what I'm saying? Tupac. I grew up on that. I don't know nothing about what's going on here. You know, so that's my get off my lawn speech, I guess, for the night. You know what I said, but I don't get it, man.
And I'm gonna say this honestly, I don't think most white people had a problem with the performance. I'm thinking that people are trying to make them have a problem with the performance. Like they're putting it out there as if white folks wanted to walk out and do us. They were sitting there like, who is this? People on their phone. Like one dude showed a clip, people on their phones, drinking beer, talking, like they wasn't even thinking about the performance. Like they wasn't even thinking about Kendrick Lamar.
They don't even know what's going on. Yeah, man.
They down there sweating, trying to free America, trying to free the black people. And white folks are just eating nachos, chilling, drinking beer. They ain't thinking about them.
What that dude Torre say? He talking about some what was it? The Instagram post that Chad shared with us. He talking about some in the red, white, and blue, and they were all black performers. What he's saying is that black people are in fact the fabric of America. I mean, it's just like wow, and they didn't act like Kendrick Lamar is just such this profound genius, bro. I don't know, dog. I don't know. Then this whole thing is the drill rap that they're doing. They had the mumble stuff going on, and now this thing called drill rap. And every other week, it seems like one of these guys getting killed. I'm just like, bro, I like my life, Blanche. I don't want to die, man. I'm having a good time. I enjoy life. There's a lot to like about this. I'm loving it. My friends, my family. I enjoy this. I don't want to hear all that death, man. I don't want to hear about all that, man.
Hold on.
I don't want to hear it no more.
Hold on, let me see. Hold on. Let me just do this real quick. Hold
up. Kendrick gave us a nuanced discussion of what it is to be black in America. He was saying America is a game and we're all trapped inside of it. The stage was a giant PlayStation controller that the performers couldn't even see the entirety of. So this is like what we're trapped in America, in mass incarceration, in capitalism, in the entire American system. We are trapped in a game that we have no chance to win. And not only that, we can't even see that we're in the game. Like the dancers can't see that we can't even see that we're in a game. And you got Samuel L. Jackson as Uncle Sam. When do we get to see a black man play Uncle Sam? And we're seeing Sam say, hey, you're being...
When have you seen a white man play Uncle Sam? Like, who? Like, you ain't seen nobody play Uncle Sam. What are we talking about?
Nah, these black academics, bro, I swear. We're trapped in capitalism and mass incarceration. Man, shut your tail up, bro. Please, man, do something about that mop you got on your head, bro. Like, what are you talking about, man?
Being too ghetto, too rebellious. Don't you know how to play the game? For an older black man to say to him, don't you know how to play the game? That is so deeply coded. Like, do you know how to navigate the system? Do you know how to deal with the hurdles that the white man is going to throw at you? Do you know how to do the necessary sacrifices and compromises and code switching that's necessary to get there?
The irony of him saying this is Kendrick Lamar is a millionaire. Clearly, he's mastered the navigation process. Samuel L.
Exactly.
Jackson is a millionaire. Clearly, he's navigated. Like, it's just the irony of what they're saying to who they are. This is nuts.
Insane. And I've been seeing Torre. I've been seeing him. He's been what MTV, BT. I don't even know exactly what to call this guy, but he's been a part of the whole entertainment media complex for a very long time. He's probably well compensated, very successful. But we're trapped in this system of
Capitalism and
capitalism,
asset conservation.
man. You don't shut up, man.
Kendrick had been doing his hardcore rap songs at that point, and Samuel L. Jackson is talking about, you're scaring America. Don't you know how to play the game to mollify these white folks? So after Sam says, don't you know how to play the game? Kendrick goes into the softer songs, the R&B. This is when Luther comes out. This is when SZA comes out. And when Sam says, that's what America wants, nice and calm, that's when he's playing the game. So Kendrick switches it up. That's when we go into Not Like Us. But of course, there's a whole game with Not Like Us. Is he going to do it? Is he not? It's like hopscotch. He's in, he's out. He starts to do it, then he backs off. Then he teases that he's going to do it again. Then he backs off. Then he jumps right into it. He's playing a game with you. And the whole Samuel L. Jackson thing is like, no matter how high and big you get, there will always be that voice of America standing there going, you're being too ghetto. You're not playing the game enough. You're not enough. And oh my God.
The irony of Kendrick Lamar playing at the Super Bowl talking about he's oppressed.
Did he get paid, Blanche? I wonder if he accepted a check. Did they pay him? Was it free?
They said they don't pay the artist, but I'm pretty sure he got a check from the sponsors. Whoever was it Apple Music and somebody. Yeah. I'm pretty sure somebody got some money somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's just to say that you're oppressed. And first of all, name me a black person in mainstream America, Chuck, that gets condemned for being ghetto.
That's what black folks sell. That's what they bring to the market.
What chick got canceled for being ratchet? What person, like, who's been canceled in America for being ghetto? Who?
I saw you see what Nike put out during the Super Bowl. I saw that video that they put out with all the women, and there was like narration over all the images, and they were saying they told you not to do this, and they said don't do that, and they're showing the prototype of this kind of ghetto female ratchetness, and what's her name, Shari Richardson, the track star, the track lady. They're showing her, and then of course they got Caitlin Clark, and it's so funny listening to some people just almost, I mean, they feel let down by Caitlin Clark because they kind of held her up as this almost like a conservative thumb in the eye of the left, and I'm like, well, she never really claimed to be that person. I don't really know exactly what her political leanings were, but people say, well, it looks like they got to her. They and I'm like, I don't know, maybe that's who she always was, but I mean, she seems for a while at least to be concerned solely and only with playing basketball.
Yeah.
And it's probably unfortunate for her because she sort of got thrust into that role, given how much the left has politicized everything. And we see that instead of just trying to sort of walk the straight and narrow, now she's again pandering and feeding into, what all of the loud mouths essentially want her to say in order to sort of save her own behind, it would seem. Or maybe she's genuine in her feelings about wanting to elevate black women and all this stuff, because she was another person who was pictured in that Nike commercial. But the funniest thing, though, Blanche, is these ladies don't realize is that, of course, we'll sit back and we'll watch you compete against other women, right? But it's not about you showing that you are the best, when it comes to you competing against those who are also in your field or in your sport, which well, particularly on a professional level, are other women. If you're competing for the time and resources and the attention of the viewing public, you're competing with your male counterparts. And the reality is, these female professional athletes, if any of them will hear us, that everything that you're trying to do, we've seen male athletes do it, but we've seen them do it 10 times better.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of the genetic limitations that God has placed upon you. You'll never be better athletes than men. That's just the reality. It's not to say that Rashard Richardson will smoke me in a foot race. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about men who actually do what you do, you know, you'll never be amongst the best sprinters in the world, because the best sprinters in the world will always be men.
She wouldn't be better than the best high school sprinters that are
Exactly. That's
like,
exactly.
we didn't got to go to college.
Exactly.
And,
So,
and,
you
and I
know,
was shocked because Carly Richardson, I just saw, she used to be with a woman. Then I saw a video, she was like, baby. And the camera panned, it was a guy. I was like, whoa. So she would have do now. I didn't.
she on the track taking off her wig. She know why
Oh,
was she knew exactly what she was doing when she did that. She knew the cameras were on her. She knew everybody would be watching. So she takes her wig off and then she gets into her little track stance. Like you said, Blanche, who was actually paying a price for being, for being ghetto?
nobody.
These are not the days of Nat King Cole. Those days are long gone. These are not the days of Louis Armstrong and Sammy Davis Jr. Those days are long gone.
So let's get into and again, it's not personal against Kendrick, y'all. It really isn't. Or the Super Bowl halftime. It's really just, these are tools of propaganda, though. They use these things to subvert people's minds. And that's what it's for. It's not entertainment, it's programming. They're not doing that to entertain you. Most probably know who Kendrick Lamar even is in that arena. So
yeah,
it ain't for the people in the crowd, it's for the kids at home watching. That's what it's for.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with that. Yep. That's all my kids. When Dad, can we watch the Super Bowl? I ain't watched the game all year. Well, could be Kendrick Lamar and SZA is performing. I said, man, I don't care about that. I know. We sat there, we kind of watched the game, but we weren't even really paying attention, bro. It was all type of stuff going on. We having side conversations. We talking, me, my wife, and my kids. And when the halftime approached, the second quarter was over, I went and walked my dog. And they, Dad, you're not gonna stay and watch the halftime show? I was like, man, I don't want to watch that, man. And then when I came back, I was like, I hope it's over by the time I get back. And it was. And then the following day is when here come the whirlwind of controversy, which I knew it was gonna be something, because there's been a controversy about every Super Bowl halftime show since the Janet Jackson's wardrobe malfunction. So I knew it was gonna be something. Yep. They judge Jew, they judge Christ, Godspeed for women's rights. They judge Jew, they judge Christ. I said, again, bro.
And this is what I mean, Chuck. Like, just let me enjoy your music, please. That's all. Just let me enjoy your music. Goodness.
That's all.
Stop all. Please stop. Just let me enjoy it, man. Goodness.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me get to. So this is Marquette Devon, and he likens himself. This is from last week. He likens himself to a historian. Let me see. Okay, he likes himself to an historian, and we were talking about the Great Replacement theory. And before we get started, Chuck, I had a question. Were there any, so before colonialism, were there any wars? Okay, how can I say this? Were there any attacks on whites by other groups in Europe? So meaning, like, you hear about Hannibal. They said Hannibal conquered Europe. Somebody mentioned Genghis Khan last week. I don't know. So were there any other groups of people that were actually, trying to conquer Europe?
Yeah, well, we had, of course, Moorish occupation in and around Spain from the 7th century up to about this is where you get the whole, no, not the 7th century, the 8th century. This is where you get the saying of thank heaven for 7-Eleven, because I think that's when the Moors first invaded. Uh, and that lasted a while. Of course, you had the Saracens, or the Mohammedans, the Bedouins, warring for control over the Holy Land against the Eastern Roman Empire, or what is also commonly referred to as the Byzantine Empire. This war went on and on and on. Eventually, the Franks, or the Christians, would essentially lose that war, and the capital of Eastern Rome, Constantinople, would eventually fall to the Muslims. Um, you had, of course, you had Roman imperialism and Roman slavery um, in what is modern day England, and it's like a island, right? Essentially, if you look at a map of the country, but I guess that's some more sort of I guess white on white, so quote unquote. I'm trying to remember. There was one example, was another major example too. I was thinking of um, in my head. Dang! It was right on the tip of my brain, and I forgot it. But yeah, there have been conflicts. Where yeah, that's what you mentioned, Hannibal, and I just want to point out too that contrary to popular belief, and I don't know, Blanche, you may have even shared this. But I don't know who first began to perpetuate this idea that Hannibal was a black man. Uh, that may not, in fact, be true. As a matter of fact, most scholars worth their weight today will tell you that Hannibal was not, in fact, a black man. He was. I mean, and there was a long time ongoing feud between Rome and Carthage, right? They fought three battles over. I can't remember exactly how long of a stretch, or how long a period of time these three wars occurred, but of course these are known to history as the Punic Wars. There were three Punic Wars, and I think the most prominent war involving Hannibal was the Second Punic War, when Rome was on one side. I forgot the body of water that separates. It's is it the Mediterranean? I mean, anyway, but there's Rome is to the north. Of course, you got Carthage to the south, and they just had this ongoing animosity toward one another. They saw the growth, and this was typical during that time when you're talking about empire building, because if your empire of your territory was not expanding, then the common knowledge suggested that your society was in fact dying. So in essence, you had to continue to expand because your neighbors and your rivals. Thank you, the Mediterranean Sea. Thank you, Rick Hempstead. Your neighbors, your rival empire, they were expanding, so you had to expand as well. And it's funny because Carthage, Hannibal didn't necessarily conquer Europe or conquer Rome, but he had one of the most successful military campaigns against the Romans up until that time. And I think he actually went into the heart of Rome and caused a lot of chaos. But Hannibal was eventually defeated during the Second Punic War and put down. So for all of this talk that Hannibal was black and Hannibal took on the mighty Roman Empire, Carthage was nothing to sneeze at. By far. I mean, they weren't these little measly, little weak people that these underdogs that took on the mighty Romans. That wasn't the case. Carthage was a force to be reckoned with in their own regard. And on that same token, Hannibal, he lost. Hannibal, it's funny, even though he's black, but he still lost. He never won. And the second Punic War was instigated primarily by a Roman senator by the name of, he's known to history as Senator Cato. And there was this huge propaganda campaign was gearing up in Rome sometime after the Second Punic War, when Carthage pretty much said after Hannibal's defeat, Carthage said, we don't want no more smoke. But Rome said, no, we got to get rid of Carthage once and for all, because there was always this fear. And it almost became, like 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. There was almost like they had a saying, I forgot what it was called, but it is said that whenever parents was having trouble getting their children to listen, if they were outside playing, they didn't want to come back in, or they would say something like Hannibal's coming, or Hannibal's going to get you, and that would make the kids all come inside, because Rome, they were, and so they always kind of had that, they wanted to get back against Carthage and put them down once and for all, and that's what they finally did during the Third Punic War. They finally wiped Carthage out for good. And like Rick Hempstead just mentioned, the North African Berbers were a Caucasian race, right? Hannibal was not a black man. I don't know where this myth came. I guess because he was on the African continent, and so anything African is black. I don't know, but
if he was from Africa, it don't matter what part he black. He's just.
Yeah, yeah. Hannibal was not a black man. So I'm sorry, all you Hotep brothers, y'all can stop that.
All right, let's go to hold on. Okay.
This theory is manipulative because it equates normal patterns of immigration with murder. It's trying to put a big equals sign between the new Salvadoran or Syrian who lives down the street and a mental image of a concentration camp. Now, obviously, if they literally did that, then you and I wouldn't fall for the messaging. Therefore, the messengers have to be a little bit more subtle about it.
And who are the messengers? They're podcasters. They're Elon Musk. That's who they are.
And lately, they've gotten pretty good at manipulating us. Here's the thing, though. Not only are those who preach about the Great Replacement theory manipulating us, but as it turns out, the entire theory is bullcrap. It's literally not backed by evidence at all. There is no secret plot to get rid of white folks, but let's just say that there was. Well, they must be doing a pretty poor job, since there are more white folks now than ever before. You might be thinking,
now this is an important piece. They talk about genocide, but there's never any murder. The only time you can observe murder, or shall we say death, maybe call it war, the only time you observe whites being murdered is usually when they're murdering each other. World War I, World War II, World War III, which is currently underway. That's when you observe it. And even Noam Chomsky points out that the Europeans have had wars among themselves for centuries, tons of them, because they're a warlike, violent people. Now, the great comedy is that.
Just at this point of fact, I'm trying not to stop you too much so we can make it through this today. Like I said this last time, I'm saying, and this has been the major impetus for this rise and what they're now calling right-wing populism across these predominantly white countries and these predominantly Christian countries, is the fact that their representatives, their leading politicians, refuse to secure their sovereignty and secure their borders, right? Ever since the Arab Spring, the consolidation of Europe vis-a-vis the EU, you have a lot of African and Middle Eastern and Near Eastern migrants coming into these predominantly white countries. Again, you're telling us that these things aren't happening, right? But at the same time, you're telling us that, for example, multiculturalism is a good thing. This is what our leading elites on the left, this is what they tell us. They brag about multiculturalism and diversity and equity and inclusion. This is what the whole push, this is what that whole mantra is all about, right? And so if you call them out on it, then again, you're the one with the problem. When you're like, no, we have boundaries for a reason. We have states for a reason. We ought to respect. Sovereignty is to be respected, because these political territories they're not superficial. They are there for a reason. And last thing before you let it play again, he's making reference to Noam Chomsky, like I mentioned last time, which is a joke, because Noam Chomsky is a complete quack. in a political. Again, he's no scholar. He's nothing more than a political agitator, a propagandist, and a charlatan. But he's one of the few. He's like a god on the left, particularly the academic left. They all love Noam Chomsky, but he's talking about
what is he known for?
well, he first became his field of academic expertise was supposed to be language. He was, linguistics was his claim to fame. And then, with the whole push in the 1960s and 1970s for interdisciplinarism, you had all these folk, simply, for example, if I were to go into, I don't know, legal studies, if I want to become a lawyer, then it is important for me as a lawyer or as a potential judge to, for example, have a solid command or decent understanding, relatively speaking, of psychology, because I have to use psychological tools in order to figure out how to apply the law, because in order to apply the law justly, right, then I have to be able to get to the bottom of, for example, why criminals do the things that they do, right? Or you have to know something about economics in order to be a good psychiatrist. So you have to know that. And so Noam Chomsky just became a spokesman on all things geopolitical, whether it be the war in Vietnam. We talked about the genocide in Cambodia last week. I mean, he just, your typical America is always bad, America is always wrong, and communism is good. And, the reason why Cuba failed, the reason why every Marxist revolution since 1917 has failed is because of the United States. We went in and sabotaged it, and our CIA and our FBI, blah, 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 and capitalism bad, and blah, 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 blah. That's Noam Chomsky, in a nutshell. But I like how he talked about, they're just they're just warlike people. Because another thing, I mean, they tell you about like the British, because it's funny because they talk about the legacy of colonialism, but Canada was a British colony, certain parts of it. The United States was once a British colony, New Zealand and Australia. I mean, we were all colonies at one point as well, but we're not like Africa and other parts of Asia and Latin America or Central and South America. And there's a reason for that. It's a simple one. But when you look at New Zealand, for example, you look at the Polynesian people, or what they sometimes refer to as the Maori people. The Maori people came into what is modern day New Zealand, historians say, around about the 1300s. And I don't even have time to unpack the whole legacy and history of the Maori people. It wasn't until the British got there to set up some system of order and rules and law, because the Maori were blanched and they killed and warred with each other, and the British authorities had allies. I guess you would call them your more progressive Maori peoples of what is today modern day New Zealand, who were in favor of the British coming in because they wanted to become British subjects, because they saw the benefits in it, because they were sick and tired of the killing. The Maori people were so vicious, Blad. I don't even do. I don't even have time to go into it, but some of the worst human atrocities you can ever imagine were committed by Maori people. And again, they were all these different disparate warring clans and families and whatnot, and they would have little confederations and alliances and just back and forth for centuries before the Europeans had even gotten there. But they were some of the most vicious, brutal, barbaric, cannibalistic human beings to ever walk the face of the earth. If you don't know anything about the Maori people, just Google them. Just Google them.
Chuck, who was already in New Zealand when they got there? Was there an indigenous people there?
Yeah, yep. That's what they're called. They're called the Maori.
So the Polynesians came and essentially started warring with the indigenous Maori people.
Yeah.
Okay, so when the Polynesians they didn't get along with the Maori.
No, they didn't get along at all.
So
They didn't
so
get along at all.
before the white man came over there, they was already fighting.
They was already fighting. They was already fighting. Yep. Yeah, but you look them up in your spare time. It's spelled Maori. remember when Chad when he played that, I'm trying to
Oh, that
remember
clip,
what
that lady in there yelling, they was in there.
it was that. Yeah, I'm like that, I'm like that. That's them. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Dude was like, order. They was like, no.
they bug they out, stick their tongue out at you. That's what the face they make, and they put their war paint on, and that was to intimidate you. And whenever a Made, whenever a Peloponnesian, whenever they stick their tongue out at you, that's to insult you, that's to intimidate you, because that means that once they kill you in war, once they defeat you, they're going to eat you. They're going to and that was like that was a spiritual thing, because to kill your enemy in battle and then to consume his flesh was to you like Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat. You became the owner of his soul. You took his soul. So you said, they gonna, and so that was how they intimidated their enemies, because people knew that if you lost in battle to a Made clan, they would cannibalize you.
You sure they wasn't white?
I don't think, they don't consider themselves to be white. Marquette wouldn't call them white.
All right, let's.
That they attempt to assign the nature of being violent to the blacks, which is comical because the Europeans have murdered entire continents of people. Yes, you guys heard of the Aboriginals? You may have never heard of the Aboriginals. Aborigines. Yes, those are the people who are original to Australia. And what do those people look like, ladies and saints? Well, I'll show you, because your teacher in high school and in college never showed you, because they want to keep it secret. Here are the Aborigines. They're black. If you can't notice, they're black. Yes, they're a different kind of black, that's for sure. But they're black. This one's darker than I am. You'd have to call that black. Black, 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 black. That whole entire continent is supposed to be black. But that whole entire continent is not black. Why? Because the devils went in there and they did what they do. Murder. That's what they do. They murder. Is murder not violent?
But let me tell you a story. I brought up the Shona and the Adabele last week. They were all part of the Zulu Empire. The Adabele broke away from the Zulu at a certain point. And the Adabele and the Shona had this rivalry with one another. And the Adabele were maybe the more aggressive of the two tribes. I'm not saying that it was always one-sided. But when the British came in, led by Cecil Rhodes through the, I think it was the British South Africa Company, he came in and he made a deal with the head chief. His name was Chief, may have been Chief Ulongulo. I can't remember his name. But it's close to that. He came in, and what the Europeans would do is they would ask for permission to mine for minerals. And these local African chieftains would give these Europeans permission to mine for minerals in exchange for other resources, primarily guns. And then I know Marquette is like, yes, the Europeans, they're warlike and they're violent. But oftentimes they would accept, trade or they would trade access to their lands in exchange for guns, because they either wanted to get a leg up on their rivals, or they wanted to use them for defense and what have you. And so Cecil Rhodes and the British South Africa Company made a deal with Chief Longulo of the Andebele, They said, okay, let us come in. We're mined for minerals, and we'll leave you alone, but we'll use the Shona for labor. We'll use the Shona for, and so they said, okay, cool with that. But the British said, but only under one condition. You have to stop fighting. You have to stop warring with each other, and let's all figure out a way to get along. Let's get this thing popping. And the chief said, okay, for a time. They were given the guns, and the Shona were essentially given labor, and they were paid, right? Were fed, were taken care of. They were able to clothe themselves because one of the primary, as a matter of fact, Marquette, one of the primary economic functions in Africa prior to European colonialism was war. And this is interesting, Blanche. This is actual fact. Anybody out there don't believe me, they can research this. When Europeans came and brought relative stability to these areas, a lot of young indigenous men had nothing to do because there were no more wars to fight, because that's all they knew. Oftentimes, in order to earn a living, a lot of these young men all across the continent of Africa would essentially contract themselves out as, fighters and serve, various wars, etc. So once stability was established, the Europeans were complaining that they were having a difficult time getting the indigenous peoples to work. I'm not talking about slavery. I'm talking about just kind of like your typical, like employment. Hey, you want a job? You want to come help work? We can mine. We can do, we have jobs. Help wanted. So you got the help wanted sign. A lot of these Africans didn't want to work. So a lot of the merchants, the capitalists, imperialists, they had to go and complain to the crown and say, we need to export more whites. And this is how a lot of whites ended up in parts of Africa, because the Africans refused to work. They wouldn't work. So they had to ship whites to the periphery of the empire to get the engines of capitalism flowing, because these indigenous peoples wouldn't work. And so to go back to my story about the Adabele and the Shona were working. Adabele were told not to harm the Shona in exchange for guns. And it was in fact the Adabele that broke the truce with the British South Africa Company and attacked not the Europeans that were there, but they attacked the Shona and nearly wiped them out. This was like in the 1880s, 1890s, as a matter of fact. And after a while, this is an unrelated story, but it got to a point, I suppose, when the Adabele and the Shona got together and rose up, and they together bucked against the British, and it caused this uprising. And guess who had to come put the uprising down? Cecil Rhodes came to, and he intervened in the conflict. And so the story goes that Cecil Rhodes walked into Adabele and Shona territory without a weapon. And all of his, fellow Europeans thought he was crazy. He walked in without a gun, and he talked to them, and he was able to broker a peace. And even I'm assuming, last I checked, the statue was still standing, because in what is Zimbabwe, I think there's still a statue of Cecil Rhodes there. Okay. And for years, the Adabele people, because of all of the great things that the British imperialists brought to the peoples of that region, they were so thankful to him that they tended to his statue. It made sure that no one harmed it, no one desecrated Cecil Rhodes' statue. They protected it for years. And this still may be the case, but I don't know, with so much propaganda and stuff. But immediately after Cecil Rhodes' death, the Adabele peoples, they honored him. They respected him because he helped bring peace to the land. So it's completely different from what this guy is saying, man. It's the craziest thing.
So I guess, again, there's a lot of nuance in what we call colonialism. And you mentioned last time about when you have powerful kingdoms in these countries, somebody's being subjugated. Weaker tribes and whatever. And it's funny that the the colonists brought actual a job market to Africa. And you mentioned them not wanting to work. I'm gonna tell you this right now, firsthand experience. When I went to Africa, the first thing I noticed was the fact that most of them are lazy. I'm sorry, they're not like, I don't know what image they're giving people in the world, but they're not industrious. Like how we get up and get in the morning and go, how Chuck works, they don't do that. You might wake up one morning to get some breakfast somewhere, and you look behind the counter and the person sleep. Like it's just they don't have no urgency.
Like, wait, my man.
Yeah, I'm like, get up. They're like, hey, all that hustle and bustle, that ain't what they do. I'm just telling y'all. So when he said it don't work, I saw that firsthand in the modern era. I saw that in the modern times.
Yeah, and it's been like that for a long time. People don't realize that it takes centuries. And the interesting thing is that people often take their gifts and they take their tools and their expertise with them wherever they go. You know what I'm saying? Germans, for whatever reason, they're great clockmakers. They're great not clockmakers, that's the Swiss. I think they're great piano makers. They're great agriculturalists. They're great scientists. Germans fare well in the academies, in the intelligentsia. But Germans, when they're outside of Germany, they don't fare well in the political realm. You know, I mean, I can think of only one president off the top of my head in the history of the United States who had German ancestry, and that was Dwight Eisenhower. But you know, people take their skills and take their gifts with them wherever they go. These things tend to sort of transcend space and time. And as I said before, part of what left the indigenous peoples of the Americas so vulnerable is because they were largely isolated from other peoples. Which, I mean, you know, when you communicate with other peoples, it can help spread human capital, which was key for Europe because they took a lot of things that they learned from Asia, took a lot of things that they learned from you know, from the Greeks and from the Romans, and even to some extent, perhaps even from the Africans. But for example, they'll tell you that, that's the point I wanted to make. And like I mentioned last time, you know, there was more communication between peoples on the in the Eastern Hemisphere because their landmass is spread east to west. You know, and once when you travel, when you change latitudes, you're changing climates, and people in the Western Hemisphere, they just didn't want to do that. We even have proof, for example, that when the Spanish and the Portuguese came to Central and South America, one of the first things that they noticed is that they didn't utilize the wheel. They only utilized the wheel for the purpose of creating children's toys. And the wheel is extremely important, again, because one of the things that leads to poverty and cultural lag is a lack of communication with other peoples, i.e., isolation.
Yes.
Right. It is too costly for you to trek on foot. So you remain where you are. And if you do travel, you travel very little. Right. And so they didn't make huge wheels. And the reason why they didn't make huge wheels, like I alluded to before, a person growing up in a warm weather climate he's not even going to think in his mind that, oh, you know, even if he has some kind of fantasy, like, well, I wanna play hockey, or I want to ski, I want to be a great, you know, something involving. If he thinks about it, if he has a television or if he has access to internet, there's something that he sees and he's intrigued by it, he's going to have to severely change and alter and relocate and make some massive changes in his life if that's something that he hopes to do. Because oftentimes, or at least back then, prior to all of this technological innovation that essentially has put the entire world at our fingertips, oftentimes your immediate environment kind of set your ceiling in terms of your perception or what it is that you ascribe to. And how that relates to what I'm talking about now with respect to the wheel is that the peoples in the Americas only use wheels on toys instead of making large enough wheels to move, right, Blanche? Because they did not utilize what are what's referred to as beasts of burden. That's why they didn't make wheels, Blanche, because they didn't have oxen. They didn't have horses.
Got you.
Remember when Christopher, it's just all about what animals are indigenous around
Right.
you.
Right.
Look at sub-Saharan Africa. People say it all the time. If the zebra was an animal that could be domesticated, it would be one of the best beasts of burden you can ever imagine, considering its anatomy and everything else is very similar to horses in this way.
Very, very
But
resilient, very
but
tough.
yeah, but from what I've heard, experts, animal experts says that the zebra is virtually untamable. You can't use a zebra the same way in which you use a horse. So the peoples of Africa, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, and what led to their vulnerability and their relative poverty to this very day. Remember, human capital develops in a vacuum is because they didn't really move about the surface of the earth in the interior because they did not utilize large beasts of burden because those animals weren't around them, right? They didn't have those animals around them, camels and oxen and things for horticultural or agricultural purposes or traveling purposes, horses, chariots. When the
Even a camel,
Europeans,
right?
even a camel, when the
Even a camel.
When
Yeah.
the Europeans first came to the Americas, when Emperor Pizarro in his conquista came and encountered the Incan Empire, part of what fascinated the indigenous folk is because they thought that they were essentially beasts or demons because they thought that the horse and the man, so the legend goes, they thought the horse and the man were attached.
Got you.
And the fact that these white men with these beards and all this plated armor, no, they didn't have that stuff here in the Americas. This
Right.
plated armor, steel. They weren't smelting steel here in the Americas like that. They didn't have it. And they saw in the way they were able to command these horses and ride them. They almost like putty in their hands because they thought that these men had special powers. They had never seen anything like this before.
So it's interesting you bring that up. You bring up untamable animals like the zebra, the buffalo. Like these are animals that aren't going to be good to domesticate.
Right.
And so now you have large animals, but you can't domesticate them. And so now, you kind of. And I also thought about this, Chuck. If you don't travel out, how will you advance your society? Like, what would you learn that's new to make things better? You won't. You'll just keep doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I often wonder when I look at these things in Africa and in South America, Central America, I'm like, and they always say these people have been living this way for thousands of years.
Thousands of years.
And I'm like, what? Like then I saw a video where they bring like sodas to these tribes, and they get the soda and they get their knife out. They try to open it, they get a knife out and cut the top off. And when they taste that soda, Chuck, you can see their eyes. They're like, "Oh my goodness, this is some dope."
That's that ghetto D, boy. They're like, what in the world? But yeah, somebody in the chat mentioned the Blackfoot tribe in the Americas. The Blackfoot were very aggressive. They had an ongoing rivalry with another tribe of Native Americans called the Cree. You had the famous Cree Blackfoot Wars. You had the famous wars between the Iroquois and the Huron Indians. The Iroquois eventually, I think, annihilated the Hurons. Eventually, the Apaches and the Comanche. Everybody knows furious rivalry. I think eventually the Comanche got the best of the Apache, but the Apache were far from angelic. And at a certain point in colonial history, the Apache Empire, and it's fair to say that they had something tantamount to an empire, but the Apache at the time, at the height of the Apache society, they had one of the, if not the largest slave economy on the landmass of what is today what is today the United States of America, in the American Southwest. The Comanche, the Comanche Indians. They traded in slaves and they actually practiced slavery. And then the Comanche society, the Comanche Empire was larger than any British colony during that time.
So the Comanche were practicing slavery before the white man came?
No, around the same. Yeah, well, before the white man came. Yeah.
So they were enslaved in other tribes.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. 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 Let's see what Marquette got for us now, because we're getting a history lesson. Let's see.
Then how then could they call us violent when they murder entire continents? They exterminate entire peoples. And in fact, their viciousness is so unparalleled that, for example, in the United States, let's say during the period of enslavement, white families in America would not only lynch a black male, which is to say hang him and have his, breathing and everything be cut off with his body weight on that rope, but they would also castrate him. They would take his genitals and cut it off. Is that necessary? No. Only if you're a vicious, violent, sadistic animal. And then just to add to it, then they would have a picnic. Yes, they would sit down, put out a blanket, and have the whole family eat while that corpse hangs in the air. Those are monsters. Those are devils. If you ever wonder that's what a devil is. You don't need to die to see a devil. They are among us.
Is he talking about Arab slavers, or is he talking about
He's talking about Caucasian slavers. Now, not even slavers. He's talking about. So, Chuck, I really wanted to look into this notion that they were killing people. Okay, here's my question, Chuck. So if white people were as savage to the point where they could watch a man hang from a tree with his genitals cut off and eat a meal, what made them calm? Why are they so calm? Like, what process took place to make the white person go from I'm cool with a black man hanging from a tree and having a picnic to now they're way more civilized than black folks? What happened, Chuck? What calmed the savage white man down? What calmed him down?
exactly? I mean, that's rhetorical, right? I mean, I would love to hear Marquette answer that question. The question is the point, right? I mean, it just goes without saying. His premise is just completely flawed. I mean, white people aren't unique in any respect. Just like all peoples do evil, wicked things. We've spent the last two live streams, or last live stream and this live stream, just bringing up examples of some of the horrors and atrocities committed by by non-white people. But what white folks did, if you want to lay everything at their feet, or the white race, whatever this thing that we've conjured up in our minds, because even as recently as the early 20th century, there were racial distinctions amongst different types of white folks. And this is at least what the eugenists were promoting back then in the early 20th century, right? There were differences between, let's say, Germanic Jews versus Polish Jews. There was a difference between what they called Alpine Europeans versus what they call Nordic Europeans. Nordic Europeans were superior to Alpine Europeans. But of course, never let history get in the way of a good theory, because the so-called Alpine European is, of course, where we get ancient Greco-Roman civilization and science and all sorts of philosophies and political theories that we still utilize this very day. Came from the so-called Alpine European, or the darker, more olive-skinned European of the Mediterranean. And so, but eventually, everybody sort of, just became white, I guess. But what made white folks different is that, or what they should get credit for, is the fact that they helped change the way, by and large, the world sees things. They help change, by and large, how the world views morality, change, by and large, what the world views as right or correct and incorrect. And a lot of that, and it's not so much to say, well, because ultimately, Blanche, you and I are of the same opinion that, I mean, all the glory goes to God, right? We're all just vessels, just kind of here to bring the message forth. But what helped change the world essentially was the spreading of the gospel. Everything else is sort of, I mean, it's worth talking about, and knowledge for its own sake is always a good thing. But as I said before, many of these men were motivated by their Christian conviction, which is why when a lot of these European empires went to these territories and saw what these indigenous peoples were doing, they felt as though they had to put a stop to it. And because if the native peoples wanted the benefit of trade with the European and protection from the European and everything else, then they had to cease and desist with certain barbaric practices that were incongruent with with Christianity. You don't mistreat women, or you don't mistreat the vulnerable.
You don't sacrifice babies.
You don't sacrifice babies. You don't do this kind of thing. And for all the Marquette's, blustering and his he doesn't mention that. He doesn't mention that. And that's because he's a bigot, Blanche. He's a bigot and a racist. He hates white people. He's a bigot and a racist himself.
But does he?
Well, he's not really a man of conviction, right? I mean, because if he did, like, yeah.
and also to me, it's relative, because so you're isolating white people when it comes to slavery. So the average person thinks, well, this is what slavery was, and this is what white people did. They never talk about slavery around it. If you want to think about this, Chuck, you can't humanely keep someone as a slave. And they try to push this and say that, well, this was chattel slavery, and this was, if a person does not want to be a slave, they say, I'm not going to be a slave, you are going to treat them very badly to make them a slave. There's this notion of nice slavery that never existed. So,
right.
So we talk about slavery, the nature of confining someone is brutal. You can't nicely make someone a slave. And so Marquette is just leaving out a whole planet of slavery. He's just saying that white people in America did this. This is what it is. This is the standard. This is bad. They're devils. But we go just across the water to the Middle East. They still this was crazy, Chuck. These people still behave this way.
Yeah.
Africa and the Middle, these people still act this way. They don't act this way in Western countries. They still act this way in these other countries with the people of color.
Blanche, I forgot and then there are many different, probably these international groups, these what do you call them, who pretty much study, let's say, human rights abuses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, you're talking about slavery. And we're talking about how they define slavery as people who are forced into sex work. You're talking mandatory military conscription. You're talking about slavery, how you think of it in the traditional sense. We're talking about child brides. All of these things are now considered to be forms of modern day slavery. Add it all up together, we have more slaves around now, I suppose, than we ever did. But when you look at the sheer number of slaves, or also you look at the number of slaves per capita, if you look at the top 10 list of countries with the most slaves and the most slaves per capita, not one, or even go further down, maybe in the top 20, there is no country on that list that is predominantly white and that is predominantly Christian. Not one country on the list. So
and it's crazy, Chuck. You say that. I went and looked through all these lists, and for some reason, they kept trying to throw Russia in there, and I'm like, what slaves are? I'm like, why y'all keep adding Russia? They just like throw Russia in the list, just throw it in there. I'm like, hold on, what slaves are in Russia? Please tell me.
I saw the most recent list. I was trying to remember Russia. What is it was some type of slavery. I don't know if it's forced military conscription. It's some kind of, I forgot what it is, that Russia is always up there on the list of human rights abuses. When it comes to this one thing, I can't remember what it is, but the majority of the countries, again, they're all African, Middle Eastern, and they're all majority of Muslim or atheists. In the
Yep.
case of, say, like North Korea, North Korea always ranks up there, one of the worst countries on the face of the planet when it comes to human rights abuses. Is a country in Africa called Eritrea. I talk about it often. It's like the North Korea of Africa.
Somalia and Ethiopia. That's what it look like them.
Yeah, I mean, Eritrea is one of the worst countries. And what's funny, like, but I've heard you say something on your most recent lives, like the hypocrisy of these people will say, well, Europeans just wanted to come in and just run roughshod and just kill and take and do whatever they wanted to do. But that's not the case, because when Europeans came to other places, came to the Americans, they came everywhere, or everywhere they went. And they were specifically instructed by King George himself not to, because they had in place what's called the right of discovery. If you discover a land, it's yours. And the reason why different empires came up with this idea is so that they can have some type of agreement amongst one another, so as not to constantly butt heads, so there wouldn't be a ton of conflict. But you also had this concept, and this was probably just commonplace all across the pre-civilizational world, was this concept called the right of conquest. You defeat your enemy in war, the spoils belong to you. Well, King George of the British Empire, who's the king over the British Empire, he put out an edict, essentially a statement saying that no native lands are to be taken without an agreement or some sort of treaty or contract. No more this idea, or there was that, or the or if land was taken as the result of this is a quote of King George, a lawful and just war. So the war had to be lawful, and oftentimes, native to Marquette, if you're listening, Native Americans would provoke conflict with Europeans. They would instigate conflicts with them and provoke wars with them. It's not like the white man never tried to get along. He tried, and sometimes he was successful, and oftentimes he wasn't. But he tried, and also that was interesting is another interesting little factoid. And it's almost like, yeah, you could expect it. It's kind of like human nature. It's like when the cat's away, the mice will play.
Mm-hmm.
And so in Europe proper, minorities were treated better than they were in the colonies. I think even Gandhi even said that the only time he experienced racism, because Gandhi had been to Great Britain, he had been there, he had lived there. The only time he said he experienced racism is when he went back home. And the white people were told by British authorities not to mistreat the natives, not to do this, not to do that. Said the whole of the British Empire is under the directive of English common law. And we do not treat anybody this way. But you can imagine that it was difficult to keep track of what everybody was doing, because at the time, it got to a point where the British Empire became the largest empire in human history. If you look at all of the land, all of the people that were considered British subjects, larger than the Roman Empire, larger than the Ottoman Empire, largest empire that ever existed. Well, sometimes whites in the colonies would ignore the orders of the king. And when that happened, the natives, the indigenous people, would go over their heads and make complaints to the king. And guess what? The white man who mistreated the natives, they would be dealt with. They would be punished, imprisoned. You know what I'm saying? If a white man did something to a Native American, committed an act of murder or anything like that, they will be punished. It's jailed, imprisoned, put to death. anything, whatever the law, whatever the expectation was, they were punished. They were punished. And so, and even after the Revolutionary War, George Washington said the exact same thing, that the rights of the Native Americans are to be respected. Everybody want to bring up the Trail of Tears and all this stuff. It's a whole lot of history in different particulars and different nuance with every situation. I'm not trying to paint everything with a broad brush, but yeah,
But
man, they didn't just come in there and say, "Well, we're going to take this." People said, "Well, the Native Americans, they sold Manhattan for a quarter, this and that." And it's like, well, okay. I mean, for crying out loud, why the heck am I? Why would I even put up this facade like I want to make a deal with you if I have the authority to just take what I want? Why don't I just
right,
take it? Why are we playing around with these treaties for?
right. And something not being perfect doesn't mean it isn't good.
Yeah,
And
right.
I think the problem is that they're holding white people to a standard of perfection, meaning if anything went wrong, they're wrong. But nothing else around the world is perfect. But only one group has to be perfect.
Yeah.
MC has a question. He says, "What do you think about the situation in South Africa?"
Oh yeah, this is South Africa. Yeah, I haven't been keeping track of it lately. I know the government was having some issues with the ANC. That's the legacy of Nelson Mandela. He was a big time favorite of of the Soviet Union, and of course, the Castro regime was a supporter of Nelson Mandela. The fact of the matter is that Nelson Mandela he was a terrorist. He admitted in open court to committing the crimes that he was eventually found or sentenced for. You could call him.
He went to prison. He
Yeah,
admitted it?
yeah. He hopefully admitted it. He in sworn testimony in open court. He admitted he killed several of his own fellow Africans.
So
And
why like he was thrown in prison unjustly?
bruh, it's a cold game, ain't it?
He
Yeah,
admitted he did it.
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yep, and of course everybody knows the old famous I forgot what they called it, the old famous necktie. They put the tire around your neck and set the tire, douse the tire and alcohol, set the tire on fire, put it around your neck. Yeah, it's called a something necklace. I forgot, but yeah, Nelson Mandela's wife, old Winnie, she was famous for for necklacing. I mean, Winnie Mandela commanded so many people to be necklaced. It'll make your head spin. You know what I'm saying?
And this was before he went to prison.
Mm-hmm. Yep, this is before and after. His wife was worse than he was. She was like a South African version of Anna Parker. And I don't know if Anna Parker. She was this ruthless. She was a famous Romanian communist who her husband too was a communist. She executed her own husband, Anna Parker. She was a famous Romanian communist who killed her own husband. But
hold on, Chuck. We got to go back a little bit. So Nelson Mandela, the beloved global figure, the man that embodies what humanity is, the man that embodies what suffering is, the man that embodies what being oppressed is. This man and his wife were putting tires around people's necks and setting them on fire.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If I'm lying, I'm flying, bro.
And when he went to court, he admitted it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't know what to say. I just and Chuck, I'm saying this, Chuck, because the world sees Nelson Mandela as this good. Like the problem I'm having, Chuck, is these people. It's one thing to be seen as a great person, and you're just like a a crook. But it's another thing for you to be seen as a great person. You're the total opposite. Like you're seen as a saint, but you're really a demon.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, he like hundreds of acts. I mean, as far as like murder, and I firmly believe that that Nelson Mandela has some bodies on his resume. I mean, if I don't know if you're familiar with the IRA. There's like the Irish, forgot what it stands for. But they were like Irish, revolutionaries were, vying for or fighting for just like a violent guerrilla faction movement that were trying to achieve or gain independence for Ireland. That was sort of like Nelson Mandela and his ilk and his crowd. This is what they were doing. You know what I'm saying? Sort of like they were like think of like the Weather Underground in the United States. I mean, they were bombing things, certain important South African infrastructure, public buildings and these sorts of things. They were, they were insurrectionists. And well, Nelson Mandela wasn't ashamed of it. He wasn't ashamed of it. He said he did it.
Might even been proud to do it, right?
That's right.
Rick Hempstead said no gold chain, just a Goodyear tire on fire. Okay,
yeah.
let me go to this. Let me get to this video. We're almost done.
And they continue to do their work. I don't want to hear any fake crime statistics about, well, you know who does more of the murders? Who does more of the violent crime? Hold on, white supremacists. Do me a favor. How many bodies have you caught in Ukraine? How many bodies have you caught in Libya? How many bones are we standing on right now? How many bodies did you catch while eradicating everyone in the Australian continent? How many people did you murder to take over what we today call Hong Kong? How many people did you murder to make it such that most of the people holding power in Mexico are white? You turn on Telemundo, they all look like Europeans. How many people did you murder? Where are those statistics? Oh, you don't count that as murder. You don't count your murder as murder. I see.
Okay, two things I want to say. I'm gonna let you go. Two things I'm gonna let you. So the first thing I'm gonna say is he said there are more white people today than there ever have been. Well, there are more people today, so of course there are more white people. Like it's just common sense.
Right.
And then he said that Jews were white. And I would say that Jews are very ethnically diverse. Just like you see all types of black folks, you see all types of Jews too. It's not just one set standard of Jewish person or any person for that matter. So he kind of tried to oversimplify these things, but he's not being completely honest. Jews are not considered quote unquote white, and there are more white people because there are more people. It's not because of some genocidal regime over the world. No. And in fact, white people are outnumbered greatly by the rest of the world of quote unquote people of color. So I just want to say that. But you can go.
Yeah, no, I'm just man. This guy, man. Somebody in the chat put it in the chat for me. The IRA, the Irish Republican Army. There was a guy too, man. His name is I think he eventually became one of Ireland's presidents. I think after Ireland gained its independence. His name was Imone de Valera. He was actually a friend of Marcus Garvey's. Man. So, anyway, man. You can keep playing. I forgot. I forget what something else I want to say, but I forgot. But anyway, you can keep playing.
Fascinating. I see. Okay. And you guys might say, well, Marquette, they're vicious. They are. But you know what gets me more disgusted and annoyed than discussing the viciousness of these devil Europeans? The stupidity of these blacks. Good Lord. The stupidity of these blacks. Oh, it kills me. It's extraordinary.
Well, duh. who encounter this content in the wild. They're graphs and academic sounding language saying that IQ data proves that people of European descent are intellectually and genetically superior. You may know that it's wrong, but you may not have the language for it. So I reached.
Well, it's not about the language, it's the research. You see, the European race scientists, they've been at this for a long time. It's actually quite comical because these people are so
false, man. False. Like I expressed last week, man, that was not the popular, this idea that black folks were naturally inferior, were genetically inferior. That attitude did not become avant-garde within the intelligentsia until the late 19th century, as you know, is the dawn, if you will, of the progressive movement leading up to the First World War. And then by the end of the Second World War, this notion that white people were inherently inferior, that fell out of fashion after essentially Adolf Hitler, to a large degree, had completely sullied that theory or that proposition. But that, and many, I mean, this was commonplace. This was a common belief amongst many of leading intellectuals around the world. I mentioned even, I forgot the name. Somebody help me out. Hold on, man. I gotta think of his name. He was a Japanese intellectual. He wrote a book on how to improve the Japanese race. Somebody in the chat help me out, man. And this came out. I can't remember the year it was published. But anyway, I think it was called something about improving the race or how to improve the race. And anyway, he was of the opinion that Japanese peoples should intermarry, should miscegenate, whatever. they should breed with white folks. You could get more European blood into the Japanese stock, and that could improve Japanese society if they were to begin marrying and having these half-breed children start marrying white men and women. And so this was popular. This is not just white people.
Is it Takashi? Is it Takashi Fujiyama?
Hold on. I think his name is Yoshi. Hold on. Yoshio Takahashi. That's it. Yoshio Takahashi. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of his book, man. If I could find it. I think it's Yoshio Takahashi. What was this year? Hold on, I'm just trying to find the name of his book.
Oh, I see it. He has a few books. He has I think that can't be it. Suzuki, no, that ain't it. That ain't it.
Oh, what is the name of it? Yeah, I can't find the name of that book, man. I got it somewhere. Or it might be, it's weird with Asians. So like the last name, you say the last name first and say the first name last. I don't know. But Yoshio Takahashi is the improvement of the Japanese race. It was a treatise that he wrote. The improvement on the Japanese race. But anyway, yeah, man, just the white. That's not something that white folks actually thought. It's not something that they actually believed. They did notice, of course, cultural differences, but they did not believe that the differences between blacks and whites were genetic. They didn't believe that. Now you got me wanting to go to my trusty sheet here. And so when Cecil Rhodes, he was asked, because not one of the things that Cecil Rhodes actually brought to the land of what is today Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia. I think it was called at the time when he got there. I think it was called Shonaland, if I'm not mistaken. but he helped establish voting rights for the peoples there. But he had this idea to relegate those voting rights to what he described as civilized men. Only civilized men should be able to vote. Sorry, I'm a little congested. And he was asked later on to clarify what he meant by civilized men. And here's what Cicero Rhodes said. He said that a man, white or black, who has sufficient education to write his name, has some property or works, in fact, is not a loafer. So that's what he's talking about. He's talking about, listen, bro, a civilized man, black or white, if he has a sufficient education, he can write his name, he has some property, and he got a job, he's a civilized man. It doesn't matter if he's black or white. You see, then this was a popular thing. This is not, this is the, that whole genetic superiority thing. That was just this quick little, flash in the pan. And then, because again, it was a theory. It was a theory that was in vogue within the intelligentsia. And that was it,
Okay. So it wasn't necessarily widely accepted.
No. And when the fact of the matter is, it wasn't even accepted amongst the peoples, in the American South, and like I was mentioning with Chad, the current documentary he's working on. I don't know how much of my interview is actually going to make it into the final cut, but what I talked about the period of the antebellum South and the events leading up to the Civil War, events immediately following the Civil War, the peoples of the South didn't see black folks in this way. They didn't see them as these inferior creatures, or these. They didn't see them in this way. You know what I mean? And you would think, common sense would tell you that they would have a better impression of blacks because they were the ones who were in closer and more constant contact than those in the North who used their imaginations more so to kind of cast this shadow over a South that they really didn't understand. And oftentimes, when the North would go down to the South, many of Northern whites, it wasn't so much that they came to liberate the blacks, so they came in thinking that they were going to treat blacks better than Southern whites did. A lot of Northern whites came in and treated Southern blacks worse because in their minds, because of think about this, Blanche, think about the psychology. Because they thought the blacks were being put upon and they were just these slaves and they were this and they were abused and beaten and tortured and raped and blah, 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 blah. They began to harbor within themselves, within their own psyches, a disdain for Southern black people. These are Northern whites. And so when they came down, it was like a pity. It was like, okay, now I'm here. Now I can fulfill all of my deviant desires because we have a weak and pathetic population here in black Southerners that let white people abuse them. This was the mind of the white Northerner, and they came, and many of them did exactly what they thought Southern whites were doing, because this is the stereotype that they had created in their own minds. Is when you go through and you read a lot of the slave narratives and you listen to the slaves talk, they wish to God that the white Northerners would just leave. Because they were abusing them and mistreating them, and they were upset at what a lot of these white Northerners had did to their families.
It's funny you mentioned that. Even MLK said that the North he said he never saw racism like he saw in the North as opposed to the South. So even King was like, the North is out of control, like even to him, like he part of the whole thing, and he was like, y'all tripping up here. So what you say, it makes sense because the attitude is these people down here don't have any kind of pride, dignity. So y'all, If y'all don't respect it, we don't either. In other words,
So instead of having like this respect for black Southerners, northern whites began to loathe them. They began to hate them because it's like how could you let this happen? You know what I mean? You're weak. You're weak, and so we don't respect you. Right.
So
But
it would be the same thing with blacks moving to the north. When
right.
they went to the north, they'd be like, y'all done came from down there, y'all. I remember one lady was being interviewed and she said down south, they throw their trash out back to the hog pen. And she was like, but in the city, they throw it out the window. And she was like, you can't do that. She said, I'm not prejudiced. I don't want to be around them.
Right. Man, let me read you before we get up out of here.
Right.
I want to read you because I want to give people a perspective. I wish I could remember the full context of this quote. And I don't think it was a famous person who said it, but I actually pulled this quote from a researcher named Nigel Beggar. Some of y'all probably know who Nigel Beggar is, and he wrote a book. I'm forgetting its title. But he talked about this whole issue of colonialism. There's another good book on this. Everybody knows the book, The Myth of the Noble Savage. There's also, I forgot the author. I think his last name is Gully, but he wrote a book titled The Case for Colonialism. Another good book. But here's a quote I saw Nigel Beggar cite. This was from an African woman who, at the time, I don't think Nigeria existed as a country at the time, but it eventually became Nigeria. And here's what she said. Now, mind you, I'm telling you about how different groups of indigenous peoples, how they viewed or what their attitude or perspective on Europeans were. Here's what this woman had to say. Her tribe was the Habe, right? And if you look at Nigeria today, the two largest clans or tribes in Nigeria that run the Nigerian country are the Hausa and the Fulani. And the Fulani, of course, were around back then. This woman here, she was from the Habe tribe. She says, we Habe wanted them, as in the Europeans, to come. She says, we Habe wanted the Europeans to come. It was the Fulani who did not like it. When the Europeans came, the Habe saw that if you worked for them, they paid you for it. They didn't say, like the Fulani, hey, commoner, give me this. Commoner, bring me that. So in other words, the Fulani was taking advantage of the Habe. She said the Europeans said there were to be no more slaves. If someone said slave, you could complain to the alkali, who would punish the master who said it. The first order said that any slave who was younger than you was your younger brother. If he was older than you, he was your elder brother. The same thing. This was the slavery in the American South too. This was that. They considered themselves to be family members, and they treated each other as such. Going back to the quote, they were all brothers of the master's family. No one used the name slave anymore. In the old days, if the chief liked the look of your daughter, he would take her and put her in his house. You could do nothing about it. Now they don't do that. What is more, Africans were not, in fact, forced to convert to Christianity at the point of a British colonial gun, but many of them chose it. So there wasn't no force, nothing. You hear these blah, they made them convert. No, they didn't. A lot of them wanted to. Same thing when I talked about the Maori earlier. Mm-hmm. A lot of the natives of New Zealand, they wanted to be under British rule because many of them had converted to the faith.
So we go back and we're starting to see political correctness. Basically, now we're starting to see the humanization of society, where it not only can you not have them as slaves, but you can't even call them slaves. So we're taking it a step further. Like we're going beyond treatment. We're like, we're going to treat them dignified now. We're going to, treat them with respect in a social arena. So
so much so that you can't even call them slaves.
Right.
Sure, and again, people recognize because you're trying to put a halt. This is human beings have always known slavery. This is all they've ever known. People have to realize that when God revealed himself, of course, when you're talking about epistemology, if you're talking about knowledge, right? You have reason. One aspect of so-called knowledge you have is called reason, or you have revelation. You can rationalize or reason your way to the truth, and then we have this thing that's called a revealed truth, right? We have the revealed truth, in the Bible, and so many people fail to realize the significance of this, right? This moral revolution that was brought into the world. This was something, to put your foot down and really just look and just push back against everything that all the wisdom of the ages had ever thought was correct, had ever taught. The voice of God came into the world, right, through Abraham. It came down through the King of all kings and Jesus Christ, and told everybody, I don't care what you all been doing this for this long. It stopped now. It stops here. And that was some revolutionary stuff. And it was a hard thing. It took time, man. It took time. But
and honestly, Chuck, I would venture to say the difficulty in Christianity spreading without these places being civilized, it would almost be impossible. Yeah. Because it has to be some kind of social order to even look at somebody as human, to even view a person as a person, to even understand the concept of Christ and God's word and all that stuff. You got to first value the person, love thy neighbor as thyself. That's almost impossible if this group isn't seen as good as this group, and this group wants to take from this. You couldn't even have it, honestly.
And sometimes, Blanche, when you got people who they don't listen to reason, you got to put a little muscle to it. You got to put it down, because you have to have an institutional structure in place that can guarantee. Because first, this whole idea and concept of rights, this is a philosophical sort of development, right? And so when people say, well, the Europeans came and stole. Well, when you listen to the claims of many different so-called indigenous peoples, even to this very day, they talk about how to parcel up the land, to divide it, lay claim to it, and to claim that you own it is somehow a violation in many respects to certain aspects of their culture that they deem sacred. Fair enough. But with that, how can you then claim that something was stolen from you if out the other side of your mouth you claim that human beings cannot own land, because to do such a thing would be immoral, because land belongs to the people. It belongs to us all, right? Because, talk about the different sort of spiritual beliefs and religious practices that many different traditional religion or indigenous folks, have with respect to these sorts of things. But in order for something to be stolen, it implies that it was first owned. Yes. But who, in fact, brought forth the concept of private ownership to the New World in the first place? It was the white man. Who say you that this actually belongs to you? Well, we've been here for a long time. Okay, well, who did you take it from, right?
And that's what I was asking you, Chuck. Yeah, I was like, who are we born and we own land because we were born on land? Like,
no, right. So when two different groups of people come into contact with each other, have never met before, in order for there to be so-called rights, right, ownership, private property, all of that stuff. In order for you to have rights, there has to be rules. And when there are rules in place, there are expectations for behavior. And anyone who misbehaves has to pay the penalty. But you need a society, a system, a government, or something in place that is strong enough to act as a deterrent against misbehavior, but to enforce punishment when people choose to misbehave anyway. If there are no treaties, there are no agreements, There are no prearrangements.
No
Who's
standard.
to say no standards? Who's to say who owns what?
Right.
Everything is up in the air. And so, this is the story of mankind. This is the story of humanity. We've since been trying our best to figure out a way to create order and essentially to figure these things out, man. And so when the Europeans came, Blanche, they had to create again a system and a structure where rules were agreed upon and rules can be enforced. Prior to that, it was if you want it, you can take it. You know what I'm saying? Just, you strong enough, go take it. That's just the way it works.
But guess what, Chuck? That is the way of the world. Think about it. Only the strong survive. The weak, like all of these concepts and what people lived on. If you were weak, somebody was going to take it. This is how it was. Like,
but when you have somebody coming in and telling you not to steal, not to kill, or love God with all of your heart,
not to pick on the weak,
not to pick on the weak. And this one I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about this a lot. I've heard a lot of other people talk about this. This is what really why Hitler had the feelings that he had about Jews in the monotheistic God of the Bible, is because it brought in his mind, and this was, I guess, the mind of Friedrich Nietzsche as well, that it brought this God into the world that suggested that the weak ought to be protected. And in the mind of Hitler and the mind of people like Nietzsche, etc., this was an inversion of real morality, because if we were in fact truly moral, then we would not in fact protect the weak, right? Because I, as a strong person, right, if you're telling me that I have to restrict myself and not abuse or go after those who I deem to be weaker than me, and you've put chains around me, you've put limitations upon me. And many of people who have this atheistic mindset, they don't like those sorts of limitations. So what it is, in fact, to go back to the fundamental premise of Marxism in general, is this hatred for God. Marquette is not he's not a godly man. He hates God because God put forth these ideas that completely revolutionized our entire concept of morality. And a lot of people in other parts of the world, they couldn't understand that. They couldn't understand it. Why are we protecting the weak? What are you talking about? Why? You mean tell me, like I just quoted you from the woman from the Abe tribe? She said back when the chief, if he saw your daughter and he wanted her, he just took her.
That was it. She mine.
Who gonna stop him? Who gonna tell him no? See, in order to be, you got to be strong. Like, yeah, I go back to Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson said, in order for a man to be a good man, he must have the capacity for great evil. A good man is always a dangerous man, but the good man is able to subdue and to tame and to discipline that danger. So as not to unleash it. Because if a man is unwilling to confront that dangerous impulse within himself, that's not in fact a good man, certainly not a strong man, that's a weak man. A great man, a good man, and a strong man is also a dangerous man, but he's a man who has that danger tamed and has that danger under discipline. You get out of line, I'm gonna baff you down. You got to be able to do that, right? That's just what it is, right? So, you got time for me to read one more quote to you before we go?
Yeah.
It's like I told you, John Wesley. He was the founder of the Methodist religion, and he was an abolitionist. He was against slavery. This was way back in like the 1700s. Here's a famous quote from John Wesley on the issue of slavery. He says, "Had your father, have you, has any man living a right to use another as a slave? It cannot be that either war or contract can give any man such a property in another as he has in sheep and oxen. Much less is it possible that any child or man should ever be born a slave. Liberty is the right of every creature as soon as he breathes the vital air, and no human law can deprive him of that right which he derives from the law of nature. If, therefore, you have any regard to justice, to say nothing of mercy, nor of the revealed law of God, render unto all their due. Give liberty to whom liberty is due, that is, to every child, to every partaker of human nature. Let none serve you but by his own act and deed, by his own voluntary choice. Away with all whips, all chains, all compulsion. Be gentle towards men, and see that you invariably do unto everyone as you wish he do unto you.
Mm.
Evil white men, y'all. These evil imperialists, these Christians who came in and took your religion and convinced you that the white Jesus and God, really the black man is God. And me and Blanche, we Yakub and Yashiba, whoever. I'm saying aloud. But yeah, man. Yeah, man. All these myths and falsehoods.
Chuck, so what you're saying in a nutshell is that I guess we can call it European expansion. Really, it wasn't the most impactful part of what we call colonization or whatever they want to call it, is actually the valuing of humanity. And it's funny how they revert, like they flip it, because like you're saying, a lot of just how you treat your fellow man had to be literally forced upon these countries to the point where they're like, we got to step in and make y'all do this.
Yeah. Not only that, but even when it came to property rights, there's a good moral question on whether or not, if you want to say that, well, the indigenous people, we here, this is our land, the Europeans came and took it. Well, are you using your land in the best way possible?
No.
For the sake of the public good? And so that's a serious moral question. It might seem like, well, let them do what they want to do with their land. Well, if I can use your land more effectively, right, then not to say that I should just come and take it, but I think it is an immoral thing to do when you as a person can, essentially, like, sort of use the land in a way that, I guess I'm repeating myself, that does not benefit the public good. It's the same way, I mean, the concept that we have today when it comes to property value. You may own the parcel of land and the home that parcel sits on, but depending upon what you do with your land can determine the value of your neighbor's property. And so are you doing what is in the best interest of your neighbor with the thing that you own? And so it's a serious moral question. You know what I'm saying? You got natives and Africans, they just sitting there doing nothing. You know what I'm saying? So, well they came and the wealth, they taking our resource. That's why Africa is so poor. No, but that resources have been there. What are you talking about?
Why ain't y'all rich?
Why ain't y'all rich? If the resources is what makes the wealth, no, the wealth doesn't come from the raw material. The wealth comes from the brain. It comes from the mind of man. All of that which God has given him under his feet. He's the one, right, who engages in this kind of economic alchemy. It's the human capital of the man that takes that thing and makes it what it is. The man makes that thing something of value. And that's why it doesn't matter about what's in the ground. That's not the wealth. Can you turn that raw material into something that another person wants to buy? These people don't do it because they just sitting there on it doing nothing. The Europeans came and said, bro, come up off this. And here we are today.
But not just that, Chuck. They actually offered them a market. They offered them a free market. Like, it ain't like they just came and no. They set up an economy there. So at the end of the day, and we've seen these places in Africa with no kind of white folks around, how they live today. They malnourished. They still, for the sake of my mind, why y'all still live out there where there's no water, no food? They refuse to leave that area. They just, I don't know. So anyway, like you said last week, there are benefits to colonialism, and most of what people love today are by way of colonialism, not ancient Kemet, not ancient Egypt. It's literally by colonial influence in these places.
Yeah, like JB Chanel said, they literally created Hollywood out of a desert. So, the most successful business model in American history. And they made Las
Las
Vegas
Vegas, right? Las Vegas.
out of a desert, right? I mean, say whatever you want to say, is the mafia, whatever, call it what you want to call it, man. And like old dog just said, man. I mean, God told the Israelites to take the land from the Canaanites because they were wicked. A lot of these peoples in these places, they were wicked. They were wicked. They were wicked people, evil, murderers. Ain't that right?
Who is the white man to judge who's evil and who's wicked? Remember that Farrakhan interview? Dude was like, but the African governments are so corrupt. This Farrakhan was like, who are you to say that? I said, man, stop. That's why you know what's funny, Chuck? Black folks don't live over there because the governments are corrupt. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why y'all don't go over there.
Bro. Man, I don't know what kind of world these people think they live in, Blanche. You know what I'm saying? They can go stay at these little resorts and do whatever and think, they've got the legitimate foreign experience. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Well, all right, Chuck. Maybe we can come back and do a part 3 without Marquette, because I really want to talk about the influence, like this Marxism, communism, because the disconnect is Black. I talk to them every day. They cannot connect communism to what they have as the Black experience. There's like this. They can't see it because they've been taught that they were the creators of everything. So they don't think that somebody could have possibly had them doing something. It's always been them. So that's where the disconnect. They can't fathom that these people were sitting back saying we're gonna use them to do this. Their mind can't even venture that far, Chuck.
Right. They can't. And it's funny, a lot of these Black folks that they idolize and they look up to. I mean, they knew, a lot of these folks, they sat at the feet. A lot of these very same white people that they claim to hate and despise and blah 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 blah. It's yeah. So yeah, man. Whenever you want me to come back home, man,
Yeah.
I'm with it.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have you come back on because I'm gonna just call it to answer y'all questions. So I'm gonna tell everybody I know to tune in. So you can kind of, give a brief history lesson just because they can't connect that dot. I'm telling you that dot. We being used by who? No.
Yeah.
We built the pyramid.
Yeah. Nick Speaks said who started Marxism. I mean, Marxism bears the name of Karl Marx, but he wasn't the first of his kind. As a matter of fact, I mean, you had you had socialist clubs and communist political clubs in the United States as far back as the mid 1800s. So we'll probably talk about some of that next time.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on today, Chuck. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you. A wealth of knowledge. You really a gem in this modern era because without you, who would? Nobody's get this information. Nobody. I mean, maybe here and there, but not how you break it down and thoroughly, and then bring us from the past to the present. So I want to thank you.
All day, man. Thanks for letting me come on your platform, man.
I know you're tired now. I know.
Nah, man. I promise you, bro. I was stunned like, dang, today Tuesday. I'm like, I wonder if Blanche still want to do that live. And I thought I kind of forgot because I thought you forgot, then I forgot. And I was sitting on the couch watching TV with my wife. We got ready to watch this TV show, and that's when the text came through. I said, dang. So I kind of, I was gonna spend a little.
We could have postponed, though. We could have postponed.
I know, man, but like I said, I'm supposed to go. Y'all tune in. I don't know if a lot of y'all follow Jericho Green. I think I'm doing something with him tomorrow. Me, him, and Chad O. Jackson. And then Thursday I got this high school basketball game to go to, and then Friday is Valentine's Day. So I'm like, dang, if I postpone tonight, ain't no telling when me and Blanche gonna be able to link back up.
Right.
So yeah, I kind of, my wife kind of gave me that look. I mean, she kind of, she thought we was gonna spend a little quality time tonight, She heard what I just said too. She like, don't blame it on me.
Tell her my bad. Tell her my fault. Tell her my fault.
she hear you. It's all good, man. You know, I'll make it up to her, man. She'll be all right.
All right. Thank you,
All right,
Chuck.
bro.
All
Yep.
right. All right, y'all. That was Chuck. You already know if y'all watching on Twitter and Rumble to follow Teach 'em Chuck on YouTube and Instagram. And thank you, Shell, for letting him, you know, speak to us tonight. Thank you so much. Go super stickers real quick. Rick Hampstead, great show with the dynamic duo, Blanche and Chuck. Happy late birthday, Chuck. One love. Oh, it's Chuck's birthday? He didn't mention his birthday or his belated birthday. Okay. Thank you, Rick Hampstead. Happy birthday, Chuck. Vintage Goods Willie. The devil was the greatest singers in heaven, so no difference with the so-called rap music. Amen. Vintage Goods Willie. Cruise Missile, always support. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Khalil. What's up, Khalil? Good evening and get off my lawn, Blanche and Chuck. Happy birthday, my brother Chuck. Keep up the great works, Jen. Salute. Happy birthday again, Chuck. I didn't know it was his birthday. How y'all know it was his birthday? Did he put it on his Instagram or something? Janan TV, have you heard of Richard Callergy, 1920s book with plan about wanted mass migration in Europe? I'll check him out though. Richard Callergy. I'll check him out. Thank you, Janan TV. Will, anyone watch the piano lesson? Thoughts on ending? Spoiler alert. Pastor tries to bless the house using Bible to no avail, but the evil white man's ghost is only expelled by summoning the ancestors. I think I might have saw a clip from that movie. Maybe. I don't know. But I'm going to check that out, Will, the piano lesson. Thank you, though, Will. The piano lesson. Rick Hampstead, again, another great show. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. One love to everyone in the chat. Thank you so much, Rick. I really appreciate it. Sub-Zero, what's up, man? Thank you so much. Shout out to my boy Chuck Blanders, Hook Up fam. Yes, Sub-Zero, I'm gonna call you tomorrow. Hit you up. Thank you. Diamone funds for Chuck to release his island accent. Bow wow, bow bow. We heard a little slip. We heard it slip out a little. What did he say? What did Chuck say where the accent came out? Bow, bow. I wonder what he said. Yes, Nicodemus, the last live stream is up. Stem said blast the home record. That's funny. I guess that's it. Anyway, y'all, thank y'all so much for tuning in. Fly in the Vaseline says you should, Blanche. Callergy advocates for a mongrel society in Europe. What? Yeah, I gotta check him out. Anyway, y'all, love y'all. It's getting late. And I will see you all on Thursday. Thank y'all so much. And I think tomorrow, check out Jericho Green's channel because he will have Chuck and Chad on there tomorrow. So y'all check out Jericho Green tomorrow with Chad and Chuck. Thank y'all so much. You said Chuck is a Yardie, mom's Jamaican. Okay, that's what a Yardie is. Okay. I didn't know. All right. Anyway, listen, I love y'all, and I will see y'all. K-Mac. I will see y'all on Thursday. Thank y'all.